Hey guys, how's it going? So first things first, thank you everyone who watched my first video on getting started real quick with ReasonReact and Next.js. Really grateful that you guys enjoyed it. Didn't expect people to be messaging me on Twitter and saying thanks for that and when's the next one coming. So here it is. I made sure I tried to get it out as quickly as possible. I do want to also give a special shout out to my friend and colleague Anthony. Anthony is a guy who put me onto ReasonML in the first place, and I've since kind of fallen in love with it. I hope you guys do too. Follow Anthony on Twitter because he's a hub of knowledge, just a boss when it comes to software engineering, and I'll link him. I'll link his Twitter down below. So. Now this is going to be a follow-on obviously from my first video, so if you haven't watched that you should go back and watch it, and I'll link that as well. What we're going to cover, we're going to set up Next.js page templates with ReasonML. In order to do that, we're going to set up some bucklescript bindings to some React components. So by doing that, you'll know how to create bucklescript bindings to JavaScript, other React components, which you're going to have to do at some point as well. Then we're going to add a very nice lightweight UI library called Bulma. It's lightweight, but it's also very comprehensive, and it's you'll see it covers just makes development of web applications really quick and easy. And then finally, we're going to add BS, which stands for bucklescript, bs-css, which if you've used Emotion or styled components before, you'll find that familiar. And I'll show you how to use that in conjunction with Bulma, and we'll make a nice little header. And finally, things will get meaty when we start to really show off some ReasonML features when we handle a toggle functionality for that header. So, all right, let's get into it. Let's go smash some code. Okay, so we're going to continue where we left off in our last video, and we're going to start by adding a page template to our application. And so this is going to be the wrapper component where all our child routes will get rendered within, just so we don't have to keep on repeating the header and footer and any other sort of persistent parts of the page. Before we do that, we need to add some bucklescript bindings for the Next.js link and header component, and possibly even the error page component. And so I'll show you how to do that. Let's start by adding a folder under our source where we want to keep all our bindings to any JavaScript libraries or React packages or other packages that we need. And inside here, I'm going to call this next.re, so we know that these bindings relate to next.js. The first one I'm going to add is the head. Define BS module, and what we're doing here is this is like essentially saying import. Next/head is what I would normally write inside the top of a JavaScript React component, saying import head from next/head. We want to tell bucklescript that this is going to be a React component. So you need these decorators for the next part, where we need to define what arguments the package, the component inside the package actually accepts. And in this case, it's a React element, a child React element, and it's going to return a React element as well. In fact, it's going to return the default element that gets exported from that page. As well, we can do the same thing for error. I'm just going to paste that in. And as well as the link module, which we use for Next.js routing. So same thing, you can see here, again, BS module next/link. It's the equivalent of saying import this package. And this takes a few more arguments. A few important things to note. The little squiggly thing there, that's or tilde, whatever we call it. So that's a named parameter. The question mark is saying that it's an optional parameter. option bool, because Next doesn't actually have null or undefined. If you're not going to pass if a particular argument to or prop in this case to a component is optional, then we specify it as option bool equals question mark, rather as it's not going to be null or undefined. So cool. Now this should have compiled our next file, unless there's an error. It doesn't like something here. What doesn't it like? Silly me. Left out the colon. So yeah, again, ReasonML is the compiler will tell you when you've made a mistake, which is awesome to have that feedback at compile time rather than at runtime. So now we can actually add our page file in components, our template, page.re. So same deal, define our React component, add our make function, and it's taking arguments in the form of child components. And we're going to return some JSX. Okay, so this little thing here, that's the equivalent of the fragment in the fragment component in React.js. Now that we've created our head binding, we should be able to call it like this. Next, the name of the file, slash IE module. Next head, close it off. And we'll give it some metadata and a title. And of course, we can render whatever children get passed in. We're now going to add our underscore app.js page. This is what Next treats as the entry point for our application. And this is one of the few parts of the application that we're actually going to leave in JavaScript. For reasons for another day. But for now, of course, we've got to do the whole importing stuff that we don't normally need to do in ReasonML. And we need to import app. Now here's where we can actually import the page template that we just created a second ago. And I showed you in the last video how to import React components into JavaScript. And we're going to do that again right now. So it does come in handy. And now we can pop that here. If I run this, then everything that we built in the last application should be there hunky-dory. So we haven't broken anything. So those routes are still there. Cool. We're going to add this UI library called Bulma. I really like this thing. It's a lightweight UI framework. It's very comprehensive, as I mentioned earlier. It's got very good documentation. It's easy to find the things that you need. There are pre-made elements that you just copy the HTML and away you go. Adjust it as you like. I will link the URL below, so please do have a look at it when you have a spare moment, because it's worth using. I found that it speeds up development quite a lot, and in fact we're going to borrow this this basic navbar from Bulma with a few adjustments. But in order to use this, we're going to have to install Bulma, so let's do that right now. So it's just a simple matter of yarn add Bulma and let yarn do its thing. We need to tell Next.js to render Sass because Bulma does comprise Sass files. So we're going to add, what is it again? Yarn add site next Sass. I think that's it. And we also need to add next CSS. And then finally, we need to tell Next that we've got these packages and it needs to compile some Sass. So we're going to have to edit our Next config to essentially compile Sass. We're going to add bucklescript CSS, bs-css, so we need to add that as well. And finally, we need to tell bucklescript that we've got bs-css in there, so we need to add that to our bs config. Oopsie. So actually, there's one more thing we need to add, and that is next compose plugins. So now that we've installed Bulma and a bunch of other stuff, we can add Bulma to our page template. The way I'm going to do it is just to import the actual Sass files themselves, or the library itself, and we can use the bs raw decorator, which is basically just saying here, just put this raw JavaScript in our reason file. And okay, next is telling us that we're missing node Sass, so we better install that as well. And I think it should be happy now. So we can add our navbar now. So I do want to just reorganize our components folder a bit. I want to keep all the components relating to our page templates together in one folder. So I'm going to create a new directory called page and move this over to that, move the page over to that. And this is where I'll create the navbar component. But before we do that, we better update the reference. Otherwise that will throw an error. Okay, so that's now pointing to the right place. So in here, let's create a new file. We'll call it navbar.re. And this is the HTML that I've taken from the Bulma website with some modifications. So I've just made a React component and I'm outputting this with this HTML JSX with some Bulma styling incorporated into the class names. If I run this, I'm still missing some styling that I want to add with bs-css, so it'll probably look like vomit, but let's have a look anyway. Okay, there it is. That's you can see the text has changed. Now let's add the navbar to the page. And refresh, we should see it, and it won't look great. Okay, so there it is. But we're going to use bs-css now to add some more stylings and make it look a bit better than that. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a new file here, which I'm going to call navbar styles.re. And this is where I'm going to incorporate the bs-css styling. So let's say that I want to add some more styles to this subtitle. So that's actually subtitle. That's a Bulma style right there. and I want to augment that with some of my own styling. So we can do this. Open CSS, and I'm going to define a style for subtitle, and we're going to pass it a list of CSS attributes. So now I can read this into my Navbar file by doing this. Open Navbar styles, and here a subtitle. There it is, subtitle. So this is going to change what my subtitle looks like. Okay, so what happened there, however, is I lost the Bulma style. So I want them both, right? So I need to use the merge function to say, give me the style that I've defined, as well as the Bulma style, because I don't want to lose that. And that should work. Okay, it is there. So I'm going to add a bunch of other styles in exactly the same way. And I need to, of course, update the references to them in the Navbar component. Okay, so now our navbar should start looking a little bit better, but there's a few things here. So we still need to overwrite the standard Bulma anchor tag styling. So the way to do that is as follows. This is where we can use the bs-css selector function to define what we want a anchor tag to look like. So I'm going to define link style equals selector, and so it's the a tag, and I want it to be a different color, so let's pop that in here. What do we want? RGB, yep. Oakley dokley. And same thing, but let's define the hover state. And I just want to add a bottom border, a little underline on hover. Keep the color the same. So border, bottom, just 1 pixel, solid, and white. So now that we've defined them, we just need to slot them into the to where we want to actually use them. So we want them in the navbar item. Let's pop them here. Link style, link hover. And if we go back, cool, there they are. Okay, same deal, but I want to create both a page section component and a footer component. So I'm going to pop those in this page directory here, section.re. Just pop that in. So this component is actually going to now take a few arguments. We're going to pass it a title of type string, an optional subtitle of type string, and a React component child to render. And I also want to have a footer component, so let's add that as well. Not footer, footer. And let's pop these onto the page template as well. So the navbar, underneath the child, we can have our footer. Okay, so I'm just going to create an index page. That'll be our home page. And I'm just going to throw in a bit of lorem ipsum for good measure. So that'll be our home page. Oh, which reminds me. So here's a cool trick. If you don't want to write react.string every time, you can actually do this. Define str up here to equal react.string. And then we can take a string and then pipe it using this little thing here. It's equivalent to a pipe in a Linux terminal. Pipe it into our string component, and it's the equivalent of what we've done in other places where we've said react.string and then put in an actual string itself, for example here. Okay, so back to our index, and I'm going to delete the files that we created in our last video because I don't want those anymore. We don't need that. And I'm going to create the the about page and the contact page, which we created links for in our navbar. And actually, I forgot to add the default export to our index file. So now we should be able to see those pages and the updated index. About, contact, lovely. I don't like the way this paragraph is all bunched up there, so I'm going to add some styling for that. And the way I'm going to do that is in the main page template, I'm just going to add one global CSS style up here for the paragraph tag, and I'm just going to add a bit of margin at the bottom. That looks a little bit nicer. And now if that wasn't juicy enough for you, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add a bit of toggle functionality to this menu. So the way Bulma handles navbars is it's automatically responsive. So if you scrunch it, it's going to add this little thing here. But if I click on it, it's not doing anything. So I should be able to toggle the state by adding the isActive class, I think it is, to the menu, which will then automatically toggle this menu in mobile and tablet. So let's do that now. So the navbar is going to have a state of whether the menu is active or not. So let's define that. Menu is active, and it's of a type Boolean. And there's going to be an action that we're going to define to toggle the menu. So now we're going to use the React hook useReducer to toggle the state. So let's define that. The useReducer hook returns a tuple of both state and dispatch, and I'll show you how we're actually going to dispatch that in a moment. React.useReducer, and it accepts state and action. switch statement. So pattern matching in ReasonML is very cool. This is a basic example. It only takes one action, and that is the toggle menu action. And what do we want that to do when it's encountered? Well, we just want to update the menu is active state with whatever is the opposite of the current state, if that makes any sense. And of course we can set our default state to false. So how do we actually use this? Well, glad you asked. We're going to update our Navbar styles, and in particular our Navbar burger item and I think the Navbar menu, to accept an argument. So let's start with Navbar burger. So I'm going to change this into a function, and it's going to accept menu is active of type Boolean. And what are we going to do with it? Well, we're going to set a state. Let's say, sorry, add a class. If menu is active, then let's add the class is active. Otherwise, nothing. We'll do the exact same thing with the Navbar menu. Menu is active. The compiler's already telling me that we've got a problem back in navbar.re, because it's saying, well, this needs to have a function. So we're going to have to update that now to actually pass in the state. So we're going to say state.menu is active. Do that there, and the same with the Navbar burger. And to actually handle our click functionality, so this is the little hamburger menu up here. We're going to say on click. Let's then dispatch the toggle menu action. And if all has gone well, fingers crossed, we should be able to go back to our page and toggle that menu. So here goes. I'm going to squish this, and the burger should show up, and should be able to toggle it, and there you go. It actually works first time. It's a Festivus miracle. Alright, so there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that, guys. If you did, please leave a like, leave a comment. Remember, this is the second video in a series where we're going to build a whole full stack application with ReasonML, Next.js, AWS AppSync, GraphQL on the back end. We're going to throw in AWS Amplify, which is very cool. So if you want to be notified when the next one comes, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.